Hey guys, Damien here. As I continue to interview the top MSPs in the world, one thing has become incredibly clear. It's time that we let go. Even more than that, every time I focus on my zone of genius and get out of the way and do the very few things I'm good at and delegate to others, I'm ready for that next level of growth. One way that I could help you is with Servosity. We co-manage your backups and disaster recovery so you can focus on what you do best, let us do the rest, and then what we do is we test the backups every single day so you never have to worry. If you'd like to engage us or just learn more, click the link below.
Sometimes it's the lack of belief in yourself, either overthinking, second guessing. Entrepreneurship and business ownership, it's not for everybody. And you have to be decisive and you have to believe that you can do it. If you don't believe you can do it, you've already lost the game.
Hey guys, Damien Stevens, host of MSP Mindset, founder and CEO of Servosity. Today, I continue my mission to interview 100 of the fastest growing and most interesting MSPs on the planet. Today, I get the blessing of interviewing Dan Shapero. Now, he's the president of TeamLogic IT with 200 owners, 300 locations, and $200 million in sales. Now, what's a guy with 1,500 employees got to do with my MSP? I know you're probably thinking that, but let me tell you this. They're going to open 30 new offices in the next 12 months. Very few people spend the time in the trenches with MSPs to go from 0 to 1 as Dan. And they know when you're going to hit this $500K to $1 million issue and what to do with it. And Dan spends more time in the trenches with hundreds of MSPs than virtually anybody in the industry. If you want to learn how you can level up your MSP, don't miss out on our conversation today. Well, Dan, I'd love to just dive right in and help me understand how you came to lead TeamLogic IT.
So it's a little, not exactly a ladder, to get to running one of the biggest MSPs in our industry. Back in the day, now probably about 20 years ago, a little over now, I worked for a company called Kaseya. And Kaseya, the RMM vendor, we were just getting the company off the ground back in those days. And I built out the initial marketing team and then the cloud infrastructure there. And during my time at Kaseya, I sat on the board of directors of CompTIA, Computing Technology Industry Association. And going to my first board meeting at CompTIA, I noticed a gentleman on an airplane I think he had a Datto backpack on his shoulder. It just kind of caught my eye. We were leaving the same flight from Orange County, California to Chicago. And then the same guy sat right next to me at the board meeting. We introduced ourselves, and it's this guy, Chuck Lennon, the founding president of TeamLogic. And he was literally sat down right next to me at the board meeting, and we introduced each other, and I realized I was talking to a customer of Kaseya. So TeamLogic had standardized on Kaseya's VSA for remote monitoring and management. Well, over the years, Chuck and I kept in touch, and it just happened that we lived in the same little town of Laguna Beach, California, 24,000 people, so small town by most people's measure. And we would get together, the two of us, kind of joked around that he liked Michelob Ultra and I liked martinis, and we would compare notes on the industry. So as the industry went from break fix to managed services to cloud to security, all the things that were happening, we were comparing notes all along the way. And Chuck was moving back east. He called me 7 years ago to tell me this and said, I'm moving back east. I thought he was just telling me I was going to lose my drinking buddy at the watering hole, but he was actually calling me to see if I would pick up the reins of TeamLogic. And that was just about 7 years ago now, right? A little over 7 years ago now that I joined the company. So I joined as the second president and chief operating officer here at TeamLogic Inc.
Now, I think most of us, including me, didn't really appreciate this breadth and scale. So of TeamLogic IT, can you give me the some of the numbers on offices or revenue or headcount?
Sure. So we've accomplished quite a bit over the last 20 years here at TeamLogic, and key to your franchise model is opening up new locations every single year, because these are brand new business starts. Once we get people up and running and going, that's how our business continues to establish momentum in the market. So over the years, we've recruited, launched, and opened 300 offices, over 300 now, and those 300 locations are owned by 200 owners. So about a quarter of our locations are owned as what we would call a multiple. In other words, somebody owns another location in their area, for example, and those collective owners combined are responsible for, as a 12-month look back, over $200 million in revenue and growing annually as a business. And growing annually this year, we'll open another 30 locations. We opened over 30 locations last year. And that's just our track record, and our plans and our goals are built around that. So it's over time built into it's not one monolithic MSP, but a community of owners who are dedicated to supporting the TeamLogic brand in their local community. And all of it really adds up. So a year ago, last April, we passed our $1 billion collected in managed services. So in the 20 years that we've been doing business, we collected $1 billion. Now, in the next 4, maybe 5 years from now, we'll have collected our second $1 billion in revenue, just to put it all in size and scale.
Mm. And about how many people does that represent?
That's currently a great question. We track between our owners and their technicians, and then the corporate staff that have a TeamLogicIT.com mail address, about 1,500 and growing.
Yeah. So you're not a single MSP. And if you were, certainly 300 offices, 1,500 employees, 200 million revenue would certainly make you one of the largest in the world. But I'd love to dig into, as a franchisor, first of all, as somebody that was an MSP, it's hard to wrap my mind around a franchisor, but I have so many questions because I think you have a very valuable lens to understand, this market. So one of the ones I'm just curious about is, you said something like in the next year you may start 30 new locations.
Yes.
Sometimes an MSP starts 1 or 2. Some of the really large ones start 4 or 5 or
something. How do we do 30, right?
Yeah, right. How do you do 30? How do you think about 30? How do you approach 30? Obviously, in this industry, we talk a lot about process and operational maturity. So you must have a different level of process because, I know it's not apples and apples, but a typical MSP, opening another office or 2 would be just a nightmare.
So there's a couple keys to the equation here on how we do what we do. And let me start off with just the owner and the caliber of who is an owner, and just explain a little bit of the background of who decides to carry the flag at TeamLogic in their local community. So about half of our owners are technical, half of our owners are non-technical when they come to us at TeamLogic. And of those owners, the one thing they probably all have in common is their background and experience. So they usually have professional experience. They've accumulated a certain net worth and have a track record in business. So they could be a mid-career corporate executive from an IT function, from a sales function, from a finance and administration function, and they have a desire to start a new business. So they're leaving the corporate world to own their own company. They have to have a certain level of entrepreneurship in order to do that, and they have to be of a certain caliber and character in order to take that leap. It's a big. You've been a business owner yourself, so you know how hard it is to get a new business off the ground. Now, as a franchisee, they may be looking, first of all, as a new entrepreneur business owner, they may be looking at starting their own business from scratch. Maybe they come across a franchise model. Maybe they come across a range of franchise opportunities that they realize that maybe they thought they liked pizza, so they want to run a pizza parlor. And they realize that they don't like the hours, or the commitment to staff and the inventory and all of that, the risks that go along in hospitality. Then they realize, hey, there's business to business opportunities in franchising, and then they see our model. Now, the half that have a technical background pinch themselves. They can't believe that there's a model around IT and technology, and it's something that they know, and it's their passion. Everybody in our industry, is so passionate about technology. But then the other half maybe look at the model itself, the managed service model, and recognize how lucrative it is. The fact that we have monthly recurring revenue, and every month's a better month, and you build up the space of subscription-based customers to grow a healthy business and reach your personal goals and professional goals of small business ownership. So that's a big part of it, is the people. Then there's the process, like anything, right? There's the process of, think about it, brand new business start. So these are not conversions. I'm an MSP and maybe I just want to tap into TeamLogic because I like their marketing system, or I want to follow their operating model. Chances are, if you're already an MSP and you've got the kind of character that it takes to be an MSP, you've probably done okay by yourself. I'm not saying that we couldn't help you, but that's not who we recruit or who self-selects to be a TeamLogic owner. So they follow a system. They have to start off in articles of incorporation, getting cybersecurity insurance, finding an office location, right? All of the things that go into building a business, a ground floor opportunity, and hiring a technician. That's part of the requirement. We don't look for people who want to work from home. We don't look for people who want to be fingers on the keyboards, managing the tickets, right? We want people who want to run a business and build a business and create a culture in their own community, be the leaders. So that's who we look for and who finds us. And it's kind of birds of a feather, attract. Anyway, then it goes on to the elements of getting yourself open for business. Now you're ready for business. Now you got to start promoting your business. And that's where, whether it's the marketing system for the new opening process kicks in, whether it's lead gen, whether it's networking, whether it's wrapping your vehicle, all the things that you would normally do to establish a local presence for your business. We've got a run book for all of that. And that's franchising. Same thing, the stack. We know what vendors are the right vendors for you when you're getting your business launched, and we curate that. And it does change from time to time. And it's the right technology for an MSP to get themselves going, whether it's because of the tech itself, the company culture, the support they get, the assistance they get from the vendor, or whether it's just the pricing terms are best for getting yourself off the ground so you don't get vendor bloat out of the gate. We have a system for that. And then there's the support. So we have peer groups from the start. This is something that we do right out of the gate, so that you get assigned accountability group to keep yourself on track, whether it's the opening process or the lead gen process, or finding your first client, keeping your first client, delivering on the promise, all of that, all along the way. We shadow you with a peer group. We have a business support manager. We have a sales enablement director. We have an operational director that follow you through your journey of opening your business. And it's designed in a way to provide that start to your business that improves your success. So, but it still starts with the right person has to have that fire in their belly to want to build their own business. So that's a little bit about how do you do 30? It's hard work. Imagine opening 7 locations in a month, or another 10 locations in a month, because they'll come in cohorts throughout the year, and we try to get everybody on the same pace. But it's hard to find the tech. It's hard to find office space, and so as people come to that through that process, when they're ready, we get them open.
So many questions, so much I want to unpack there, Dan.
Yeah.
How do you guys figure out who to self-select? Because it sounds like
Great
whoever
question.
has X dollars is not the right fit. And I think we've all hired the wrong person or hired the wrong person to open a new location or any of those things.
So franchise development is quite the process. And what our model, we don't find you, you find us. And that's just part of the way that it works. And that we have a rigorous process that you have to go through in order to want to be a franchisee of our network. And there's we're equal opportunity, so financing does come into play. You have to have established net worth and cash on hand to be able to build the business essentially. But you have to really want it, and you have to apply for it and go through the interview process and come visit us. It's part of our expectation is, you just don't sign up online and off you go. We want to make sure that it's a cultural fit as well, and it works. And that you're touching on the key ingredient there is culture. We have a very distinct corporate culture that attracts people that want to do business in a certain way. And when they understand our team and what drives and motivates our team and our character and our values system and our business philosophy, that kind of person who highly values the qualities that we value, again, birds of a feather. And that's how we get the right people. And the beauty of that is then you've got people with a certain value system in our network, these 200 owners, who hire people within that value system, and then they cooperate with one another. We're all in it together, even though we're couple hundred separate legal entities, right? But we have this certain esprit de corps that makes the TeamLogic difference and provides more advantage than even our franchise system as a whole. The support that they give one another, and when I say they, our owners, it goes beyond anything I've really, with all my experience in MSP, all the communities I've participated in, I've never seen anything quite like the way this group of folks engages with one another. It's really a special little corner of the managed service industry.
I want to come back to that, but I wanted to dig in a little bit more because I know in the earlier days, culture for me meant you're kind of like me, you're my other people, or you're somebody that comes in early, or you're heck, you at least live in our city, right? But you're establishing offices all over the nation and with very different backgrounds and very different skill sets. So, I think it's hard to boil down culture without it being just like, I don't know people that agree with me. And I imagine the breadth and the depth, not only geographically, but, the background and skill sets and all kinds of things means that you have to have a better understanding or a different understanding maybe than others. So how do you help figure that out and not make it just like whoever Dan or Damien says is good, and which seems completely arbitrary?
So I'll back up a little bit and talk about our business and then share credit where credit's due. So TeamLogic has 20 years of franchise experience. We're part of an organization called Franchise Services that has 50 years of franchise experience. Have been around a while. The founding CEO of Franchise Services is a gentleman by the name of Don Lowe. Don, still looking out the window, comes to work every day after 50 years in our business. Wow. And one day Don told me a little story. He said, Dan, cultures are easier to create and they're harder to change. And I share that with all our prospective franchise owners is getting the culture, because it's 30 new business starts. Establish a value system. We have a university class. It's a requirement. You got to come to California to get yourself trained, 6 days of training before we put you in the peer group and help you get your first client and all of that. And Friday afternoons, we review your business plan. And a big part of that is your value system. So our value system, what makes us tick and how do we keep our culture alive, is it's not about the technical skills. It's about the soft skills. It's about hiring people who are in line with your own business philosophy. So if you hire right and you hire those people that you can trust, and that you feel are going to be a steward of your company, steward of your brand, steward of your culture, when you do that, then you perpetuate that culture, and you feed it, you nurture it, and it pays the dividends. So for us, it's really important that we treat each other like family. And when I say each other, the staff treats each other like family. We treat our owners like their family. We expect our owners to treat each other like family. We treat our vendor ecosystem like family, because we know things are going to happen and things are going to go sideways, but we remind ourselves that we didn't do it. It didn't happen on purpose. And we're just here, like you might with your kids, the things you learn or teach your kids when they're little, that we respect each other and support each other in that way. We build trust with our franchisees, and quite frankly, with everybody we do business with, through honoring our commitments. So when we do what we say we're going to do, show up on time, follow up with that document, whatever it might be, pick up the phone and call you when I said I would, then you come to rely on the fact that we're going to do what we say we're going to do, and that's trust. And for any MSP that's out there, your staff. So if you can't trust your staff to take care of your clients, you got a problem as an owner of an MSP. That means now you're following up. You're the one trying to make things right all the time. And it comes down to, maybe it's lack of integrity or lack of commitment, lack of urgency in your staff. So you want to get people that hire the people that share your values, hire the people that know right from wrong, hire the people that, sometimes people don't know what's right or wrong. So in your company, you have to make it okay to make mistakes, because you want to foster that openness that people will, if they have a problem, they'll say, hey, I think I made a mistake, and we can laugh it off. If we can laugh it off, then we can clear up the mistake and move forward and know that next time there's a mistake, you won't have any fear of sharing that you made a mistake. Now, sometimes you don't know that you made a mistake, but then that's where doing the right thing, just integrity. So I'm going to fix problems. It's part of my job. If something doesn't go right, I got to make it right. How can we make it right? Can't always wave a magic wand, but where I can, I'm going to try to make things right. We operate with a certain urgency. So for a tech company, my background, if you go way back, early stage tech companies, we were always trying to get first mover advantage. And I think we did a good job with that at Kaseya. No one will doubt that. For a new business start, like a new franchisee, it's all about cash flow break even. You started your business and I got to cover my expenses. So that's our urgency, and the staff knows that. And then we have, it's a simple word called results. I'll unpack that for you a little bit. Results is profitable growth, not just top line. We operate on a royalty model. So you can grow your business and not be profitable, and we still win, but you won't be happy as a franchisee. So the staff is calibrated to driving profitable growth for our franchisees. And if we drive that profitable growth, then our franchisees are happy, our staff is happy, everything works out in the long run. So it's just it's a value system, and it's, like I say, it's more than just saying the words. It's it's living it, hiring the people that can follow that kind of business philosophy, and then reminding them about it all the time. We're always trying to improve our processes. We just want to polish the stone or polish the fender, whatever you want to call it, on our systems, because a franchise system can be, think about security and all the SKUs, all the way to the statements of work and all the operating procedures in the middle. That's a lot to deliver on, and it's changing all the time. So we have to be committed to always moving the ball down the field, always helping out a little bit more. So that's a little bit about, you ask that question, how do we do what we do, and what about culture? Culture is key for us.
Something else I found after interviewing so many top MSPs is peer groups. So since you've been there, did you always enroll new owners in peer groups? What does that look like? Have you evolved that?
Yeah, so that's a great point. The peer group has evolved over time in our business, and it's for us, establishing a peer group, and the way that our peer program started was certain owners of a level and sophistication in their business, with a certain commitment to the values, with a certain commitment to growing their business, openness and sharing their plans, which could include their exit strategies or personal lives and all of that, being transparent with their financials. It's out of a population of a few, it's hard to get just that group in a small ecosystem like ours, but it did happen, and it does happen, and it happens on a regular basis, where we'll bring together owners that are like-minded. I think one of the things that the company did right, and it was before I got here, we had some of our top owners in those types of peer groups where they were up and running and just trying to navigate the industry and grow together. At the same time, we established the peer groups, we call it pay setters, for our new franchisees. So that out of the gate, how do I navigate everything I need to know about being an MSP? But what we notice is an observation, sometimes it's like fresh set of eyes, is that there's a gap in between being at the top and just getting your business started. Right. And people like Gary Pica would call it the ticket trap. You get to this point where you're about $500,000, not quite $1 million in revenue, and you're spinning all the plates you can spin, and you're too busy to sell, you're too busy to hire, and now you're stuck in your business. And we recognize that had its special challenges. So what we did was we created a peer group, more of an accountability group, during that special point of inflection in an MSP's life, to get them over to the hump. Now, it doesn't mean you have to have the same level of commitment to be in a peer group that shares openly their financials or otherwise, but you got to be willing to talk about your pipeline, got to be willing to talk about your people and your operational challenges, because it's such a critical point in your business. And getting the feedback from others, and then openly expressing your commitment to solving your problems, is improving the likelihood that you're actually going to go do it. So I think those peer groups, whether, ours is like a closed ecosystem of peer groups within our network, but it's hard business, and it's hard to go it alone. And you can go to, if you're just getting your peer exchanges from flying around from one conference to another over the year, and you're on the road all year, well, who's running your business? Who's talking to customers or prospects, or solving the technical challenges or inspire your team. So having that group, even if it's informal, is a good way to keep your business constantly moving forward.
That's really insightful. Have you seen other areas that are certain inflection points, certain headcount or revenue milestones, just like that, but at maybe different ones?
It's funny you ask. I mean, some of our owners, there's always a stigma about that $1 million milestone, and aside from like just getting myself to break even and then getting myself to that area where, hey, I'm now making a decent living on my business. I was asking one of our top owners, this is about a year and a half ago, we had a gathering at our owner summit. We have our own get together with the vendor show and the program and the whole bit. But I was saying, hey, how did you, what did you think after you went through that first, that first milestone of you hit the $1 million milestone? And his comment was, I never looked back. So it was rather interesting. And I feel like as your business grows, having that repeatable sales cycle is a key indicator of another milestone. I mean, you get yourself to a certain point, but then now what do I need to do to scale my business? And when you get to that it's maybe not time-based, may not even be dollar-based, but it's activity-based. That, hey, I've got my account management and we call them technology business reviews process down. I've got a repeatable sales cycle in my business. I now have operating either manager, director, chief operating officer of my business in place where I have a different role, a leadership now in my business than just being the salesperson or the problem solver or the recruitment person in my organization. So I think there are more other points of inflection are more, and at least, there somebody may say certain revenues or other metrics. For me, I look at it more activity based. Or do you have the right activities buttoned down in your business to where you're busting through that next challenge or barrier of growing an MSP, which is, again, a complicated business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How much, out of curiosity, how much is this, I have this, never started a franchise, and I have this preconception that franchises are about to start. And they give you the playbooks and processes, and maybe I don't start off using marketing, and later I start to use that more. But I have this maybe false preconception that it's really more about the start. Is it really all about the start? Obviously, if you don't get off the ground, nothing matters. Or is it as I reach different levels, you kind of have different playbooks or different ecosystems I want to tap into to kind of figure out how to get to that next level?
Well, we have a saying we use all the time, which is follow the system, our system. And we, not saying we're the only way, but we have a way that we know works. And it does start with marketing out of the gate. Okay, you don't wait to do your marketing. It does start with hiring a tech. You don't wait till you have a client and then try to backfill. You have to build your business with the intention that you're going to get to that milestone that you need to be at within the first 12 months of your business, and that in the next few years you're going to be at another level in your business. Now, different people work at different paces for different reasons. Sometimes it's family situations that can, health situations can be a distraction. Sometimes it's the lack of belief in yourself comes in, where you're either overthinking, second guessing. Entrepreneurship and business ownership, it's not for everybody. And you have to be decisive, and you have to believe that you can do it. If you don't believe you can do it, you've already lost the game. So when you lose that, sometimes it takes a while to realize that, it's the only way to see the problem is looking in the mirror, that it's my business. I got to get out there and do more. And whatever the do more might be, whether it's more prospecting, networking, whether it's more investment, whether it's more or better hiring, or more sales activities, or more follow-up in my day-to-day, no sales, no eat. So that's just what it takes to be a business owner. So we have a way, and I firmly believe that our system works when our owners work it, right? You take that and you apply it, you'll be successful.
Very different ways that you could do things. Following the process is obviously key. I'd love to kind of switch this up a little bit and ask you, Dan, what are some of the challenges you faced in the 7 years, and more specifically around the mindset? Where have you not believed where you could have, or you've been in this space for a while, and so I'm kind of curious, what are some of the challenges you've personally faced?
So if I were to look at challenges in the business and then challenges personal, just kind of separate the two, I think that the challenges in our business, the top challenge, probably the same challenge and opportunity that all MSPs face, is security. It's been really surprising how MSP and MSSP converged over the last few years. It took a pandemic, but the bad guys never sleep. We've got people working remote outside and from behind that firewall, and there's always something new, and there's no finish line. You just have to keep on top of whether it's processes, whether it's tools, whether it's training, or otherwise, to combat the security challenges that our industry faces, that our industry requires. If you look at requirement for cybersecurity insurance or other compliance standards, the game is constantly evolving. And every year there's going to be a new something on CIS that we're going to have to face to implement in our businesses, right? So that's on the business front. I'd say overcoming challenges, like on a personal level, I'll go back. I've picked up a few things here in franchising, but I'll go back really span of a 30+ career. And if I were to reflect back just personally, I got a few gray hairs now. What did I learn to get the few gray hairs is that I only have a couple of regrets, really only one, and that was selling a BMW to my mechanic because his kid wound up driving it for years afterwards. That's like the personal regret. So I don't really have a lot of regret in my life. But I do look back and say that I wish that I had a better understanding of compassion earlier in my career than maybe later in my career. If you ask Warren Buffett, he might tell you, I wish I knew about compounded interest rates earlier in my career, right? But for me, it's the art of compassion. That when you're a leader in your organizations, that you have to understand some of the challenges that your people are facing. It's not that they're not trying hard, or it's not that they're not capable. It's that there's something underlying that you got to get to, and you have to help them understand that, because they have to solve those problems. And when you can understand that, and I'm not just talking about passion for your work, and I'm not just talking about empathy or sympathy, I'm talking about truly understanding inside the personality, the psyche, what's causing that person that block? What is their true limiting factor? When you can figure that out for them, then help them understand what that is, then you start unleashing potential. And, when you're an early stage startup, so a lot of venture backed startups, there's not a lot of room for that, right? I mean, you're going against very competitive times. You're looking at first mover advantage. You got a lot of venture money you're trying to put to work, and people have to be on their game, and it's chop chop. There's only, what we would call it, gas in the tank, because we get so many dollars, and if we don't put those dollars to work quickly, we don't get the next round of funding and all of that. So I would say that the venture community, you don't always associate with the most compassionate bunch. So learning that over time, and then I feel like working in the franchise model in particular, because these entrepreneurs are betting it all. They're taking their family money, their life savings, their retirement funds, etc., and they got a lot on the line, and this is their livelihood. I mean, it's 10-year commitment, pretty much good chance of renewal for their business. And so when they get stuck, you got to help them, and how do we do that? We have to understand, what is that block? What's that challenge? How do we get over it? And then how do we get over it together? What can we do to help remove that suffering, to get somebody to that next level of their life where they can pursue their own dreams. So, like I say, a little bit about just a commercial for compassion out there. That's something that didn't have as much appreciation for earlier in my career as I've accumulated over time.
I think that's a wonderful answer. I have this mental model. I don't know if it's correct, but I kind of see you as an aggregator of all the things, problems, solutions, right? With 200 owners, 300 offices, very few people probably are seeing our industry in the way that you are. I'm curious, like, what are the challenges that you see are the top ones that are bubbling up or that happen again and again?
Yep. There's a couple of different approaches to franchising. There's a very strict model, and then there's maybe a softer model. We tend to be on the softer model side when it comes to that. And I'll give you some examples. It's pretty easy for people to think in franchising of hospitality brands like a McDonald's or a KFC. And the Colonel was known to throw the gravy on the floor if it wasn't made to a specific specification, or everybody goes through Hamburger University and learns how to set the fryer to 3 minutes to make those French fries come out consistently, because it's part of your brand standard. In IT, and I'd say business to business franchising in general, we sell as much about of ourselves and our value systems, our commitment to show up on time and be friendly and be consultative. All of those are part of our brand value, and that's embodied in every franchisee, every one of our owners. But when it comes to the aggregator of the problems or the challenges and even the opportunities, is bringing things to market inside that brand value. That we can't always be the first to market. We have to be right to market. Mm-hmm. And then if we're going to be right to market, we have to carve out the path that we think is it may not be best for everybody, but it might be best for the majority. Where are we going to find that next dial to turn, whether it's pricing differently or whether it's better ways to bring the next security tool in our stack to market. We have to figure out as much of a turnkey way to do that. Now, that may not work for everybody, but if we can find a way that it works for the majority of people and then build a system around it, then we get adoption for the program. And so we don't have the mandate like it's the Happy Meal or Impossible Burger and everybody's going to get it, and we have to line up the supply chain that way. But we might look at what is the next level of 7x24 security analysts with eyes on logs to isolate isolated desktop or a server if need be when the end user did the darndest thing. So
Right.
we have to figure out, well, who are the right vendors, and so we aggregate that challenge or that problem, and we figure out what's the best way. We do a lot of that by talking to our owners, talking to peers in the industry, doing our research and all of that, and then hopefully you get right to market. I use this analogy. I'm based here in Southern California, so born and raised in all of that. So grew up surfing, and sometimes people wonder, like, how do you catch those waves, right? And the analogy is,
Mm-hmm.
well, you check the weather report, the tide situation, the swell direction, and you show up at the right spot at the right time of the day, so it's not too windy, the tide is right, the swell's at the right angle, and then you stretch before you go out, and you'll go where the waves are, basically. So we go where the puck is going in our business to try to navigate through some of that to be right. And being an MSP is super, super busy work.
Yeah.
And we can't throw 30 things at an MSP and say adopt 30 things at once. We get a shot at 1 to 2, maybe 3 in a year that we think you can adopt in your business to make a fundamental change, whether it's value to your customer or price point or price advantage for you or labor efficiency. I can go on, and there might be 12 things because technology changes really quickly, but what are the 3 that make the biggest impact? And we have to think about that when we build our plans and roll out our plans and, spend our treasure here at the corporate headquarters to try to figure out what are the right relationships and where do we double down or where do we back off a little bit in order to make sure that we're solving as an aggregator of problems, we're solving the right problem for our franchisee. And like I said earlier, a lot of it's security. That's a primary these days for probably not just us, but most MSPs.
If we were to zoom out a little, you probably talk to more MSP owners than virtually anyone. So I'm wondering, is there a common 1 to 3 challenges, culture or leadership or sales or I'm just kind of curious if you see like these are the things that, I know that right now it's cybersecurity. In 10 years, who knows what it'll be, but there also seems to be these things that, gosh, we all need, unless you're natural in one of those, it's a common pattern.
Yeah. Challenge-wise, probably the biggest thing in the business, and it's been this way and shouldn't come as a big surprise, is people. How do we get the right people, the best people, keep the best and the brightest in our staff? The thing that breaks my heart is when I hear somebody say they're going to back off on their marketing because they're going to break their bench if they bring on a new client. Awful position to be in as an MSP owner, right? So, I was surprised that many of our owners turned to offshore. If you look back 6 to 7 years ago, pre-pandemic, before we had remote workforce and all of that, and people working from home, we're always made in America. And now we've got some franchisees looking at offshore labor because, there's available resources, readily available resources. The infrastructure, like what we're doing right now, tends to knit us together a little better. And you can get some price advantage for skills that maybe otherwise you couldn't even hire for, let alone keep. So labor is always been a big challenge for the business. Today, where we look at the market opportunity, security, as I mentioned, cloud computing, again, another recent phenomenon. I mean, licenses like M365, people take for granted as a cloud service, but providing more desktop as a service or other application hosting is gaining in popularity in the MSP base as a whole, not just us here in our ecosystem, but across MSP communities and channels. We see more and more of that in the small to medium business space. And then, there's always that specter of artificial intelligence, AI, right around the corner that, I feel like where we are today is in the it's like the MySpace AOL era of AI. All right, we're looking at ChatGPT. Like, it's cool, it's kind of fun, but is it really going to fundamentally change my world? And you hear even like some of the top leaders in tech. Bill Gates gets productivity by summarizing email. So does Mark Cuban. This is what they're doing. Elon Musk finds it really good for summarizing emails too, because they get a lot of email. But solving deeper problems like in the medical field, that'll make fundamental shifts, or automating through agent-based technologies where we're not just finding out problems, but we're actually executing runbooks in our world. Today, we rely on our vendor ecosystem for a lot of that. So we're excited to see some of our vendors like Kaseya and Autotask come out with next best response for a ticket, and taking a look at how to either write a response or interpret a ticket thread. That's great stuff. Ninja, our RMM vendor for patching, has patch sentiment analysis. Now, it's going to be a while before we all just rely 100% on, am I going to let it patch it all for me, or do I need to be part of that process, especially given CrowdStrike and others out there of what's important and what's not. You may not just delegate all of that today, but having that information and intelligence available. And what does that mean to the MSP for their own world? And I haven't even gotten to clients yet. Businesses that are trying to license Microsoft Copilot, right? And they don't know what they don't know when it comes about securing the infrastructure, or taking for granted what it means when you GPU, NPU enable your Azure tenant, and that you're in your M365 environment, you're basically using the collective of your data lake in your company to get responses, irrespective of whether that information is tagged and classified for confidentiality or not, right? So there'll be a role for us to play in that when it usually comes down to the same things, people, process, technologies. We'll be issuing, we have them now, acceptable use policies, and we've got use cases internally on how companies can take advantage of those licenses today. But it'll be an interesting ride as we get closer to that agent-based technology, where it's not just getting information and determining is it right or is it hallucinating, but where we're actually relying on repeatable processes. For almost every job there is on the planet, there's some part of a repetitive muscle motion that everybody goes through, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, annually, whether you're an estate planner trying to figure out what information I need to collect to fill out a form, or an insurance company, or whether you're a radiologist trying to spot the tumor. There'll be some augmented tasks and functions that will turn ordinary people into extraordinary people. And that's something in our future. So when you look at the overall opportunity, MSP, it's hard to find an MSP who doesn't think they have a bright future. It's just part of our industry. We are all excited and bullish, and when we get together, we have a lot of positive stuff to talk about. We're in a growing industry, and it's a great place to be. And AI has been around for 50 years, but it always seems like there's something new around that next corner. And again, maybe that's one of the wisdoms of the gray hair, is that you look back and say, gosh, I've kind of seen that pattern before. So how do we take advantage of that and like catching the wave, be in that right place at the right time, get the telemetry together so that we're right to market overall.
Well said. Now, you may have answered this one before, but what's the biggest lesson you feel like you've learned over your career, Dan?
It's hard to say if it's one lesson or the aggregation of the many lessons that I've learned. Trying to think about it. I like my analogies, so let me use a bicycle. running an MSP could be like riding a bicycle. But think about what goes into riding a bicycle. You got most people don't learn to ride a bicycle without the training wheels. And when you take the training wheels off, you're probably, 4 to 5 years into it before you figure out how to ride a bike without the training wheels. And I think for new MSP, it's kind of like that. You don't know what you don't know till you you get hired by your first client, and your tech does your first onboarding, or when the time that comes when you have to do an offboarding or what have you, or scale your business. Think about how complicated a bike really is. I'm not talking about just riding a bike, but I can't even fathom how many independent parts go into a bicycle. Even just the wheel, right? A wheel's got a hub and a bearing, and it's got some bolts and an axle, and then I haven't even gotten to all the different spokes, and each one has a nipple that goes into the rim. It has a tube that's got a valve on it, right? The valve's got parts depending on the valve, right? And then there's where the rubber meets the road on the outside of the tool. I think you know where I'm going, or on the outside of the tire. I think you know where I'm going with the MSP toolkit. Is like there's a lot of tools, and then time goes by, and we figure out better ways to engineer the tools. Used to be like if you ride a mountain bike, how a derailleur worked, okay, and how a shock worked, and whether you could lock out your shock or not lock out your shock. And then the next thing you know, we've changed the whole gearing around from front derailleur to back derailleur, and it just changes the whole dynamic of how you ride a bike. And bike gets a little bit more expensive, but so does the game. So there's a lot of analogy there when you look at all the different lessons that go together. The one big idea in there is the lesson is, MSP, like riding a bike, but don't take it all for granted. It's a lot of hard work and you take for like even just balancing on the bike, even, honestly, just being a biped and standing on 2 feet. That's a miracle that we do what we do, that we, all the different foot motions that it takes just to keep your body stable and your equilibrium such that you don't fall over every single time. It's amazing, right? And so I'd say that's the big idea I take away from MSP. It's not just, there's no one thing that's going to solve all my problems. It's mastering the connectiveness of the financial model, to the people, to the technology, to the marketing, to the sales, to the customer satisfaction and service delivery. Putting that all together, there are hundreds of lessons to learn in every one of those areas I just mentioned, each one of them. And that's the exciting part about it. And just having the patience and the discipline that you're not going to get that right out of the gate. It takes a few years to learn to ride a bike. And I mean, I've seen people out of the gate in the first year, miracle that they're just running an amazing MSP efficient business, but have the patience. For most of us ordinary folk, it might take a little bit. So yeah.
It is a tremendously complex business.
Yes, it is.
And I don't think enough people take the time to hear that because you're so busy, right? Just trying to keep your head above water, whether it's meet payroll or pay for the first person or the next person,
yes,
or land that next client. If there were one thing you could do differently or over, what would that be?
Oh, I think I already answered that one for you with learning a little bit more compassion early in the career. Yeah, I go back to that.
Okay. What is your biggest challenge right now?
So for us, I go back to that again. Security is just the one thing that will keep you up at night. Our brand is MSPs. Okay, forget about just the TeamLogic brand. We're only as good as the weakest MSP. Here at TeamLogic, our TeamLogic brand is as strong as the weakest TeamLogic. So if you look at protecting that brand, the golden goose that lays the eggs, it's not a very good look for an MSP to be compromised, and that your office as an MSP, you're only as good as your strongest tech or your strongest employee, and it takes that one employee or technician, whether it's a non-technical person or otherwise, to get phished and send out that campaign, that phishing campaign, or your website gets infected and starts distributing malware. I mean, that is not a good look for an MSP. So that's the challenge of the MSP in today's world, is protecting your brand. And for us, protecting our brand is where we've got a lot of different challenges that we face every day, whether it's hiring other people, getting the next customer, all, picking the right vendor, right? All of those things, I feel, at least maybe as my vantage, is add up to that pain point, or the risk factor of protecting the brand in and around security. So we have a security first initiative internally, and we have a security standard that we have aligned to CIS that we ask our franchisees to adhere to. We have a number of internal security programs that we implement to ensure that we do everything that we can do, not just to protect ourselves, but also protect our clients. So that's part of it as well. I mean, it's a bad look for you. It's not a good look when your client gets compromised either. It's probably the best way to lose a client. And worst case is if there's a security compromise and it's on you as an MSP, and then it makes the local pubs, that's not a good look for you either. So we've been through our own challenges, being a Kaseya shop. We had to endure, an international security challenge that took nation states to resolve. That was pretty close to the fire in the kitchen as I'd ever want to be. So
Right.
never want to be there again. And touch wood, we won't. Meanwhile, we do what we can to bolster our own security here.
Yeah, I think you're the first one that we started off recording, and your security software ate the recording as a malicious thing, right? It wouldn't let us talk, so you had to make sure it was on the up and up. So you definitely have a lot of layers, which is the right approach.
Yeah.
What's something you're looking forward to right now, Dan?
So, it's our continued growth. I think about it all the time. We have a clear vision and a clear path. We're at 300. What's the path to 400? And it's that all the steps along the way where we get together with a big tent, all our franchisees come together annually. We do it in the fall, and we celebrate our success every year. And so I just look forward to each and every one of those opportunities to share that what we do together as a collective. It's an honor to be able to do that, and to be able to provide that lens to the owners. Everybody's, heads down in their business, whether they're hiring or supervising or managing their ticket flows, or whether they're selling the next opportunity or taking care of the client or going out and doing a scheduled business review, all the daily activities. And for me, I love to watch the results that we achieve as a combined entity, that we achieve that, whether it's the top line growth, whether it's our overall metric on bottom line profitability, or watching our percentage of MRR grow, or whether it's the headcount growing, the number of devices we manage growing. I just love watching that. That's part of the MSP model. And I would say for us, it's like hyperscale, right? We've got 200 MSPs combined. It's a lot of 1,500 techs and growing. It's all and growing and growing. Fingers on keyboards contributing to that success. But if I was just an MSP, I would be focused on the same things. I'd be looking at those same types of metrics that I could use, whether it's how many endpoints my techs are managing, or whether it's how many am I onboarding a new customer every month. I would be looking forward to every one of those successes, because you should be achieving it as an MSP. And if you're not, look in the mirror, because that's where the challenge is. Because I talk to so many MSPs, whether they're in our network or in industry, and it's hard to find these days somebody who's still struggling to figure it all out. It's not the way it was 20 years ago, where we weren't really sure all the services that we were supposed to deliver, or what we needed to do to curate our tech stack, or what methodology of marketing worked or not. It's any of them work as long as you put your mind to it, and you're consistent with it. All those things add up. So really looking forward to whether it's next year or the near-term future for our brand. Celebrating next year will be our 20th anniversary. Should say this year, our 20th anniversary. So for us, that's a big celebration that we all get to pull together with as well. So the big 20 and 2025. So a lot to be grateful for.
Yeah, that is a lot. 20 years. What's one book you would recommend?
So I'm the kind of person that picks up a few books all at the same time, and I'm always reading, catching up on different parts of my brain. So I'd say, and I don't know if this is for everybody, but it's working for me. There's a gentleman by the name of Ray Kurzweil who wrote a book about the singularity, and it's a book on AI. Now, you got to know this about Ray. He's the chief architect for AI at Google. That's his job. He's also credited with optical character recognition, OCR, and he has a company that makes keyboards. He's an inventor, computer scientist through the whole modern history of our industry. And he wrote he's credited with predicting the singularity, which is basically computer intelligence at the same level as human intelligence. So where compute can actually reason, not just ones and zeros, inputs and outputs, but actually provide that human aspect to a decision or an outcome. So he was credited with that 20 years ago when he wrote his book, and he predicted now was the time. Well, last summer he just put out a new book called The Singularity is Nearer. And so he's doing a fast-forwarded modern update on the case for why now. So if you're in the tech industry and you're not thinking about AI as part of your future, you will not be part of the future. So you need to start boning up on all of that and not be a denier of it. It's not a conspiracy. It's a reality that there's a lot of infrastructure being thrown at it by the technology base in the world, whether it's what's going on in other countries or what's going on in the US or what's not going on in Western Europe these days, which is a bit of a shame, is that there's a lot of investment happening in that space. And so Ray's book, especially if you're a computer scientist, I am not, I'm a CPA, so I have to skip some of the stuff in there because I'm not as good at set theory as others might be, but I get the gist of it. He does a fantastic job of summarizing, the limitless nature of AI. If you can get through power, data, and the chipset challenge, anything is really possible because we've got all the data, and it's really coming down to power and chipset, throughput. And seems like NVIDIA is doing a good job on the throughput. I know that Microsoft's bought 3 Mile Island, and the Saudis are building data centers. There's a lot going on in our world. So I would definitely recommend Singularity is Nearer by Ray Kurzweil. You can find it, pick it up on Amazon.
That sounds like an amazing read right now.
A good recommendation.
Dan, thank you for your time. Thank you for being just so generous and open with your thoughts and where we are in the industry and where we're going. And thank you so much for being on MSP Mindset and just a gift of your presence.
Hey, Damien, thanks to you for putting MSP Mindset and putting the mindset of the MSP at the forefront of our industry. And thank you for inviting me and including me in your podcast series.